Session. My name is Willie Tejada. I run developers and ecosystems for IBM. This is part of the strategy sessions, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this fourth revolution that we're actually in, which is all about essentially cognitive era and innovation and how it'll come about in the cognitive era. A little bit about where we're going and how you as developers essentially can exploit a number of these things to build and infuse cognitive capabilities into your applications. So if you think about it, one of the things that you'll see is in the duration of time that was roughly 2004 to 2010, all the foundations for the cognitive era kind of came about. Because in 2004, essentially, Facebook was released. The iPhone was not yet. But in 24 months, they accumulated roughly about 20 million users. And that generated the massive amounts of information that we have right now in social media. Amazon Web Services in 2006, Facebook was 2004, actually released its first web service known as S3. And when you think about it, in 1995, Amazon.com was a bookstore. So it's an interesting kind of evolution of what ended up happening, but this was the beginning of the democratization of our technology to make it pervasive to everybody that was actually out there. It's followed by the iPhone, okay? And iPhone came about roughly in 2007. They reached 1 billion iPhones essentially last year, and about 395 iPhones are sold basically every minute. And then this thing called Watson from IBM was launched roughly around the 2010 timeframe. And Watson was this interesting thing because when it came about, it had its platform for notoriety, roughly actually in the context of competing on Jeopardy. Now, it wasn't the first time that IBM had done something in cognitive computing. For those of you who remember, we had a computer that was called Big Blue, and earlier it had defeated one of the grand champions, Garry Kasparov, in a game of chess for the very first time. So someone in research said, I think we can actually do a Q&A application. And the task at hand was essentially, how do we get a computer to compete against the Jeopardy grand champions and win? And what that took was the design, essentially, of a system that could ingest roughly what was 200 million documents, get a question asked in natural language, understand what the meaning of that was, and out of that body of information, serve forth an answer in roughly 5 seconds. Now, all these elements actually happened fundamentally in this era that was roughly 5 or 6 years. And if you take a look at what's happened since then, the amount of information that's produced on a daily basis has just exploded exponentially. And this is the foundation for why cognitive computing is going to be essential in almost everything that a developer builds actually going forward. Now, a couple things to note about the data explosion that you actually see here. Number one, I have an earmark of 2.5 exabytes, which is essentially 250 billion. But when you take a look at that, you'll notice essentially that some of the data roughly is in organized enterprise data and text, things that can actually be derived. But then you'll also notice that quite a bit of it basically is unstructured data in terms of images and media. As an example, in the medical profession, 90% of all data that's actually in the medical profession is actually unstructured. You think about radiology, you think about imagery, all these other pieces are PDFs in relation to what their insurance forms are. And then a tremendous amount of information will actually come about later on as we actually take a look at what's going to happen in IoT. So if you look at it from that standpoint, you as developers, just to kind of paint the landscape that possibly could be the opportunity. Most developers prior to the cognitive era were building applications that were actually going right after this traditional IT spend. And that productivity area was roughly $1.5 trillion that makes up everything from data centers to enterprise management, CRM, ERP, everything that's in that business processing environment. I call it the traditional model when you actually think about it. And what we actually see with cognitive, the combination of data, essentially coupled with the types of things you could do with cognitive systems, is in fact creating an opportunity that's larger than the traditional IT data itself. $2 trillion opportunity across each one of these particular vertical industries. And so, when you frame it against the data set that I had mentioned, just keep in mind that in healthcare alone, 160,000 cancer studies are published every year. You have roughly kind of 230 active clinical trials. And for a physician, he's going to need a cognitive system to help him manage these types of things. Now take it, I saw an article the other day that said the next CMO, next chief marketing officer will be a data scientist. And that comes from the fact basically that 500 billion tweets happen every day and roughly 230 billion social posts happen every day. And part of what they actually try to do is all that data and how do I remarket or market to those people. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is actually through the help of a cognitive system. So roughly when you think of it kind of in terms of that landscape, what we're going to take a look at is a variety of APIs that will be made available to you developers to do a couple things. To deal with that tremendous data explosion that's kind of happening from all inputs in all areas. The second piece is how do you apply those things essentially to the opportunity set that I said is the next decision support systems. Now, you're going to see essentially some examples of what we actually can do in cognitive with Watson. The idea essentially of Watson can see better than any other AI system, describe its contents, the imagery, assign associated values to it, label those images better than a human can, is one of the capabilities that you'll see in the API set. We've also done testing that humans essentially drop about 5% of the words when they're doing natural language processing, 5.1. We've gotten to an accuracy level of Watson actually being able to do that to about 5.5%. And then when you think about processing of information, Watson can basically read about 8 million words a second. So when you think about the applications that you're going to essentially design, it's kind of this API family that you'll take a look at it. And it even has to a point where Watson has an EQ. It's not just essentially the knowledge or the IQ, but it has an EQ where essentially we can apply personality insights, emotional analysis to the dialogues that are actually going on. So I have a partner in crime with me, and one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to show you some examples and use cases of taking a combination of these APIs, putting them all together, and building some things that are actually fun. But the important piece to walk away from, hopefully, this session is data is the fuel for cognitive. That the landscape essentially is entering into new area, that developers are the next builders that will exploit it. And we just want to show you a few examples. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who will take you through some interesting pieces here. And just to give you an idea, he's going to fly without a net. Hopefully, basically, we have some demos that will work.
Thanks, Willie. Okay, yeah, that's me. That's actually, I'm really into extreme sports. No, I've never done that, and I never will. That's very scary. I have, sweaty palms just looking at it. So yeah, I'm going to do a little fun demo for you guys. Hopefully it works. And this is of one of the, we're calling them journeys internally, but essentially they are developer-facing sample code with how-to guides that show you how to do something interesting that we think will solve a problem for developers with Watson technology, with IBM technology. So this is one of them. This is build a TJ bot. TJ bot is this little guy here. It's essentially a Raspberry Pi inside of a laser-cut cardboard box. You can get them online. I think we're going to show a link later. But you can essentially build this yourself, compile from source, and do this demo. This is called Sports Buddy. And basically, I'm going to show you it running and how our Watson Conversation Service, which is a bot training graphical user interface along the lines of API.ai, Wit.ai, others like that, that will help you train and retrain on the fly. So without further ado, here it goes. See that? It's a little small on the screen, but hopefully you can see what's happening.
Hi there, I am awake.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Watson and I love baseball. Who's your favorite team?
The San Francisco Giants.
The San Francisco Giants are currently in 4th place. How do you think they will do this year?
Pretty poorly.
Don't give up hope. There are a lot of games left this season. Would you like me to text you the San Francisco Giants' upcoming schedule and some headline links from Watson News?
Yes.
Your text has been sent. Are you interested in any other teams?
Okay, so we'll stop it there, and you can see this is our Twilio integration, so it comes with that among other things, and this was already planned, just sort of serendipitous. But you can basically enroll in, subscribe to text updates about your favorite team, including headlines and scores, and I'm getting a lot of them now. So, but let's say that, I think we can all agree that maybe the Giants aren't going to do that well this year. So I'm going to go into the Watson Conversation interface, and you can see the nodes that actually powered this dialogue flow that I just did with the robot. And by the way, that highlighted a few of the different APIs we use in addition to Watson Conversation. So it was able to pull sports scores using another service that we have called Watson Discovery. There's a lot of really interesting things. And importantly, it read my emotion as being sad. If you see sadness, it gave me this response right here. So it said, don't give up hope. There are a lot of games left this season. Would you like me, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Or wait, is that right? Where's sadness? Yeah, okay. So we're going to change that to, let's say, give up hope. Give up hope. There are a lot of games left this season, but you won't win them. Okay? Is that too severe? I'm trying to double jinx the season, okay? Don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so now let's see. Was this trained? Okay, it was trained. Try it out. Now I can literally just go back and run the app and get to that point again.
Hi there, I am awake.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Watson and I love baseball. Who's your favorite team?
The San Francisco Giants. Still.
The San Francisco Giants are currently in 4th place. How do you think they will do this year?
Pretty poorly.
Give up hope. There are a lot of games left this season, but you won't win them.
Yeah.
Would you like me to?
It's probably true. Okay, so you can see how you can make changes on the flies, and it will be invisible to your users, and whatever front end you're using, the responses can be updated. One of many features that we hope you check out. If you're interested in checking out this or others of our examples, we also recently did the VR Speech Sandbox, which is going to be powering this feature in the upcoming Ubisoft Star Trek game. That's also available freely on GitHub. But generally speaking, if you want to check out these or more, we've got a website called developer.ibm.com/code. And this hosts all of our journeys, these and many more. And we hope you check them out. Thanks a lot. I'll give it back to Willie Tejada.
Okay, so I think what we wanted to do basically is just kind of wrap up this session. Essentially, is I wanted to call out just a few things basically that are important. Number one, you saw essentially that cognitive development and API development, and coupled with the right APIs, will be a combination essentially of the application and the data set that it's trained. From an IBM perspective, we always talk about cognitive systems are probably only as good as the data that's training them, and essentially the people that are training them. So you have to remember basically that there's this element of that. The second piece is, much of the data essentially that Michael pointed to, some of that data is directly available actually on the web. So we have this concept essentially that there's a lot of data sets. From a developer's perspective, you should think of your data itself basically as your natural resource that you're trying to essentially get value from. And we think of that essentially as that refinement process. And one of the things, just like actual natural resources, is the person who has the natural resource isn't the person oftentimes that gets value from it. It's the person who refines that natural resource and then monetizes it. So from a developer standpoint, you have data. The key element basically is to refine that data to find insights and collect those things as training sets. And that refinement actually allows you to exploit that data. And we see that happening in 4 sets. There's roughly essentially your own private data. There's public data available on the open internet. There's partnered data. And there's third-party data that might be licensed. You're going to find IBM has a lot of data sets that you can use. So as an example, we bought a company called the Weather Company. And we bought it for 2 reasons. Number one is weather is a key component of many apps that you may choose to build that you can infuse to actually have a better experience. It doesn't matter if it's a shopping application and you're taking weather information to figure out dynamically exactly what types of ads you want to promote. We also apply weather in the medical profession. I didn't know this, but if you're a diabetic, the weather can actually generate or have you have a different insulin level. And so you have clinicians actually utilizing that data to actually infuse the level of insulin that they suggest for the people that they're actually doing. So use this data that's available actually to infuse into your applications to make them better. The second piece is essentially infused into each one of our applications, at least for you guys. The other part that you should know is that everything that we do, we try to infuse the domain knowledge as well. So there's always a domain ontology that can come from healthcare, financial services. And oftentimes what you'll get from us is a service that's already pre-trained. And so you'll find Watson FinTech APIs to actually do things specifically in the FinTech space. Or you'll find, in many cases, some examples of bots that are already trained in a particular area. You know, a bot for telecommunications example is different than a bot for a hospitality example. And so these things are important, essentially, as you bring all these pieces actually together. Now, the last piece that I'll point to is, in this next era of computing, that there's, in fact, we think a different architecture will be that for your development teams. Number one, data science and cognitive development are very much hand in hand. As I mentioned before, data is essentially the fuel for cognitive and artificial intelligence. But just like, when you think about when we did big data, when big data kind of came about, we didn't have roles like the data engineer and the data architect and the data scientist. As we go into the cognitive era, essentially, we also don't have roles like a cognitive architect or in this case, basically, someone who does the cognitive data operations for continuously training as well as refining the data sets that will continuously be ingested by these systems to have them learn. So it's important to know that these things basically come about. When you think about development for things like a chatbot, this is the next generation UI. Chatbot, any kind of virtual assistant interface, requires the same level of discipline in design that most people actually take in UX. And so all those things are tremendous opportunities for developers because we're right at the beginning of each one of these. So listen, with that, I want to thank you guys for actually coming in. Most of all, come out basically to where we're at, see a little bit about what's actually going on, of what we're demoing out on the floor there. I think what we have is a candy machine that if you talk to it very meanly, it'll give you a sour candy, and if you talk to it really nice, it'll give you a sweet candy. Give you an idea of what's capable there. This side, IBM, the code site, you'll find a number of on-ramps and code examples that we think are the most relevant right now. You'll see these new, what we call developer journeys being published on a monthly basis. And by all means, come to my developer advocates and explore what you can do with Watson and build the next cognitive application, because we're always asking, what will you build with Watson next? Thanks very much.